My name is Liang Yu. I'm a senior research fellow from BPRI. I'm glad to be here. This session actually is a perfect example of this conference. It's CGIAR and ADB, so we are trying to get the partnerships going on this session. So, we'll talk a little bit about this, from research point of view, what we do on this climate resilience, very important topic. Another one also, hopefully, our ADB colleague is more the practical side. Hopefully we are not, of course, as researchers, not too much research can have some implications. When I talk about my CGR colleague, is also we want to make it more practical rather than, the research. Of course, research we want evidence-based. It's not there. So before I start, I'm really glad, Channing, take advantage of Channing is here. Channing actually is my boss, also it's very important, but more important, he has the senior director for the Department of Transformation Strategy, which is, the new reformed one CGIAR. I think, Channing, you can set the stage, give us, what we do on the climate change action in CGIAR. Thank you, Channing.
Thanks a lot. Pleasure to be here. CGIAR is a big organization, around 9,000 scientists, and runs, from basic science, breeding, all the way to systems and systems transformation, and the work on climate change runs across that. So it's in our breeding programs, looking at heat tolerance, drought tolerance. We breed for nutrition. So in Pakistan recently, there's released high zinc and high iron varieties of wheat, but those varieties also had the trait of heat tolerance. So, a couple seasons back, there was a period of high heat which wiped out a lot of the existing varieties, and this variety of biofortified wheat has grown in Pakistan. Extends into crop techniques, soil fertility, fertilizer, all of these sorts of issues in a higher temperature, more volatile environment. What happens, for example, the work at Erie on alternate wetting and drying for emissions of methane from rice, extending into livestock, heat stress, enteric fermentation, and those emissions. There's a lot of work similar to what Paul Winters was talking about in the previous session on extending information to farmers so that they can have an improved basis for making decision making. A lot of the work that we do at more systemic levels now involves risk and uncertainty and extreme events. So, these average effects from climate change are building and growing, but the uncertainties and the extremes, here in the Philippines, the cyclones, for example, in other places, the extreme heat, like I mentioned in Pakistan, those things are areas where policymakers have a lot of interest, and we work at those levels right up. So from breeding all the way to, what sort of planning are you doing in the Ministry of Finance to, have the budgets to set aside how you should be allocating your budgets in a warming world, how to get to resilience. One of the things that I'm just working on right now is, because we work in extreme events, we have a lot of interest from central banks on the implications of these extreme events for the financial sector and the financial system. So the CGI really does have quite a run across this. This session is going to dive down into some of a lot of the work that we do in the CGIAR, we don't call it climate work, right? So for example, the policy work that we do on gene editing and GMO crops, we don't say that's climate work. But if you look at the list of gene edited and GMO crops available in, say, Africa, what are the traits that they have? Drought tolerance, heat tolerance, disease tolerance, pest tolerance, all of these things that we're after. So almost all of the work that we're doing in the CGIAR these days relates to climate in one way or another. And so I will not take more time from you and allow you all to move into your session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Channing. The next speaker, we are trying to set this one CGR. CGR actually, I know, John is the co-lead of the climate resilience. I would say it's primary. So one is the primary climate action initiative. We are still in the initiative stage. So we are the one, as yesterday said, climate change is supposed to cross the board everywhere. But if it seems everywhere, maybe it's nowhere. So that is why we have this initiative dedicated climate resilience. Is this systematic risk. And then I think I hope John is co-leader of this climate initiative, and then you can set up the stage about what this is about.
Good morning, everyone, and it's great to be here. As Liang said, I work very closely with him and with Alice, who's going to be talking today within CGIAR. John Helene, I'm with International Rice Research Institute here in the Philippines, but all my work is really on this CGIAR research initiative on climate resilience known as CLIMA. And I just want to take a few moments to sort of set the scene as to issues around vulnerability, climate resilience, because it, I think, provides a sort of conceptual framework for all the work that we do, as Channing was saying, not just CGIAR, but ADB and everyone else. If we're looking at climate action, there's so many different components of the research we do. The modeling, the agronomy, the farmer decision-making, etc. And certainly within the climate resilience, and within the CGIAR, a very strong emphasis on vulnerability. Now, this is a food security forum, and climate, food, and nature. The text on the left, I'm not going to read it all out, but I mean, that's lifted from the flyer for this forum. So the strengthening food systems, the sustainability, the resilience, the engaging with policymakers, and I'm going to touch on these a little bit further on. And I find it very important in all the work we're doing, because there's so many different components to what climate action, climate change research, leading to food security, what it means. I find it very useful bringing people from different disciplines together by just occasionally reminding ourselves, what are we working towards? And this picture on the right is a reminder to me, and it's one I like sharing. If we're looking at climate resilient agriculture, then we can imagine multitudes of the picture on the right. So let's just imagine for the time being that we've got sustainably produced rice base, so there are other crops, education, health clinic, road system, good maternity cover. So we're looking at a resilient livelihood based on agriculture, off-farm income. But we are working towards realization of the Sustainable Development Goals and beyond. So under that idea of climate, food, nature, it's people and it's sustainability. And I see that as the great goal that we're working towards. How do we actually do that? Now, we work in CGIAR, it's Research for Development. And the initiative on climate resilience is very much driven by transformative adaptation, which the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change started talking about a lot in a report in 2022, which is very much tackling the root causes of vulnerability. And for a researcher in the CGIAR, and maybe for some people in this room, it can be a bit of a salutary point made to us when we do so much, and we have done for decades, on technologies and practices. There are so many technologies and practices out there. A lot of them are absolutely fantastic, but uptake and scaling has always been a challenge, and increasingly a recognition of really more focus on that enabling social institutional and governance environment. That is key to the transformative process that we're talking about. Issues that we also need to think about in that idealized landscape on the second slide, the penultimate slide, the last slide I showed, there's also issues of maladaptation. Channing referred to farmers. Farmers are not there's not heterogeneity within farming communities. There are wealthy farmers, there are poorer farmers, male farmers who may be able to take advantage of interventions more than female farmers. There's issues around ethnicity. And at the end of the day, when we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, when we look at climate action, there are major trade-offs between environmental and socioeconomic outcomes. So in the way that we do our research, and as we talk about climate resilience, an increasing emphasis on transformation and an increasing emphasis on interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinary approaches, with a key to partnerships, which is why it's so good to see the agreement, I think, signed on Monday between CGIAR and ADB, and looking at how we can strengthen that partnership. Within the research area that we're in, we've been brainstorming what does transformative adaptation mean for how we do research, top right-hand corner, and issues of voices. Whose voices are we listening to? What climate action is being targeted to whom? So a paper that just came out a few days ago on Indigenous voices. I was in a session on the Pacific earlier today. We're looking at business unusual. We want disruptive research for development. And this is where the work that we're doing in climate, and I think fair to say throughout the CGIAR, different terminology. A colleague of mine sitting at the back who does a lot of work on gender and social inclusion. In climate, we use a framework which we call social equity, which includes gender, but lots of other intersectionalities. Caste, ethnicity. We don't need to get bogged down in the details of that figure on the left, but essentially we use that to try and guide our research so that we're cognizant of who the vulnerable are, what interventions are being geared at different sorts of people, what are the real climate challenges faced by different farming communities and others, and seeking to minimize that issue of maladaptation, where inadvertently some of our interventions might lead to greater social inequities within farming communities, interventions which are appropriated, again, by the powerful, the wealthier members of a community. And the great recognition of social differences and inequalities, including gender but not exclusively gender, shape that vulnerability and influence people's access to innovations and resilience. And that framework we use is both a framework, it's a tool, it encourages interdisciplinarity, and it helps us with the whole issue of monitoring, evaluation, and learning as we're looking at how our research for development with partners is leading to change. And if I look specifically here in the Philippines, the research initiative that we work on is worldwide. We have a focal country here in the Philippines where we know that there are tremendous climate risks. I know Channing was talking about heat in Pakistan. Even though I've lived here for 6 years, the heat over the last few days here at the beginning of April is pretty dire. And I hope it doesn't mean that we're really in for a dreadful few years or whatever. We are developing literally at the moment, this is why I wasn't here earlier in the week, we're developing a proposal with the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research on climate resilience in the Philippines, which is very much building on CLIMA's work, the Climate Resilience Initiative, and also will incorporate aspects of the presentations that will be coming after me. Working closely with different government departments here in the Philippines, with University of the Philippines in Los Baños, and some of the work that my colleague Alice is going to be talking about in a moment is all about de-risking. We're essentially looking at building further on work that's been done, and perhaps shifting the dialogue a little bit from climate smart, where climate smart has tended increasingly to be seen as adaptation, mitigation, and food security, when originally it was food security and other human development goals. And I like the term climate resilience, which really puts a strong emphasis on it's not just a question of an agroecological system being able to sustain climate shocks and extremes, it's also about human development. And a report that CGIAR brought out, I think about 2 weeks ago, and it was officially launched last week, and this links to our work, the picture on the left. Some of the work that we're doing and will continue to do with ACIR funding, looking at the whole issue of social and gender norms within farming communities and along the value chains, the realities that people face, the restrictions they face in being able to embark on transformative climate adaptation pathways, and the ways that business unusual can both challenge and use these gender and social norms in order to empower different peoples and work together in those true partnerships that we have. So CGIAR, with a snapshot of some of the work that we're doing and will continue to do with funding from ACIR. Clearly, this part of the world, Asia and Pacific, is critical to the Australian government, as it is to a lot of other governments. We welcome the opportunity to develop the work further, and we'll be building on those concrete building blocks that other speakers here will be talking about. And I hope that we can, as a result of this, strengthen even more the partnership, the relationship that we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. By the way, this is a small group, so I think we'll do the presentation. If you just take your pen and pencil to write your questions, and we'll have like Q&A in the end. Well, I'll ask all the speakers to come up. Alice, go ahead.
Hi, can you please put up my slides? So I'm going to talk about the work of Climber in one of its focus countries, which is the Philippines. So as you know, the Philippines is a climate vulnerable country. So we are visited by about 20 typhoons in a year. And how do I? Okay. Oh. Wait. Okay. So let me go back. So rice is a very important crop in the Philippines. It's a staple food and the source of livelihood for millions of Filipinos. And the Philippines is a major rice producer, consumer, and importer. And the Philippines is vulnerable to climate risks. So about 20 typhoons pass by the country annually. And you can see here the typhoon tracks that have passed by from 2001 to 2013. And about 463 billion in damages have occurred due to extreme weather events in the last 10 years. And more than half of this is from agriculture. And without effective adaptation and disaster risk reduction, climate change is likely to exacerbate income and wealth inequality and also slow down the poverty alleviation progress. So I will be talking about three major activities that we are doing here in the Philippines to de-risk rice farming. The first is climate smart mapping and adaptation planning, or CS mapping. So this methodology has been implemented in Vietnam and has been scaled there or institutionalized, and we're trying to do that here in the Philippines. The next is the use of crop insurance based on satellite data. And the third is it's RCMA's Climate Plus for enhanced farm level advisory. So the map on the right shows the sites where we are conducting activities, but it is hoped that from these sites we will have our learnings and then we can scale to the entire country. Okay, first the CS mapping. So CS map is a participatory mapping approach to identify climate risks map affected areas, and develop location-specific plans. So here we gather different stakeholders, so farmers, municipal officers, and other local government units to map to map the climate risk. So here are some of the sites where we conducted activities. So as I mentioned, we invited farmer leaders and other partners to come up with, to identify the important risks and the major crops in their locations and identify adaptation options. So this is an example of the map that we digitized out of the paper map that they worked on. And we asked them also to define what to them is the climate risk. So they have a definition, for example, of the flood, because sometimes in different areas, the definition is different. And we also asked them when it occurs and how often. And then we also asked them to identify adaptation measures. And some examples that I identify include changing the cropping calendar or infrastructure improvements in terms of irrigation. And sometimes they also say pray or do nothing. So in cases like this, they don't see any options for them, but just to bear it. And so I think these are the areas where we have to think about what options are there for them, because they couldn't find on their own, or maybe in these cases, they may need to be moved out of rice production or out of agriculture altogether. So these are some of the adaptation options that our participants identified. So most of them have to do with the use of varieties, so the use of flood and drought-tolerant varieties, adjusting the crop calendar, which is actually one of the adaptation measures being promoted by the Department of Agriculture as part of the Masagana Rice Industry Development Program. And there are also structural suggestions in terms of improvement of irrigation facilities and diversification. So the next step that we need to do is how to translate these maps, because these are maps that have been generated through a participatory approach and they've identified options, but how do we translate them so that policymakers will be able to use these results and incorporate them in their comprehensive land use plan and in their local climate change adaptation plans. We're also training our partners so that they will be able to use these maps and combine them with other maps that they already have. Okay, so let's move now to the next major activity, which is the area-based yield index insurance for rice based on satellite data. So this is a collaboration with the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation and the Philippine Rice Research Institute. And they have designed an area-based yield index insurance product for rice using data coming from the Philippine Rice Information System, or PRISM. So PRISM is an operational rice information system using synthetic aperture radar. So this is it started as a project co-developed between Erie and PhilRice. And since 2018, it has been handed over to PhilRice. And so this is an operational system. So it has transitioned from research to operation. And what does it do? So it provides information on where rice is grown at high resolution. So that means you can get data much finer than the provincial level, which is the official statistics. And also provides information on planting dates, so when rice is cultivated. So when you know when rice is planted, you will know when rice is going to be harvested, and so it also provides information on potential shortfalls in production. And importantly, for insurance, it provides information on yield. So it provides much more detailed information, as I mentioned. And for example, in the last map, you can see some red areas there. So those are the areas where yields are very low, so about 2 to 3 tons per hectare. So these are the areas where productivity enhancing technologies can be looked at. So on the basis of this operational satellite-based system, PCIC was able to develop an insurance product. And the good thing about this is it's operational, because when we were discussing with them, that was the first thing that they asked: is this operational? Because if it's just a research activity, then there will be no continuity. So they're very happy to note that has been going on since 2018 and producing a lot of data, because they need a longer time series to be able to generate good products. So we have conducted an orientation using this insurance product. One thing I would like also to mention, that PCIC is happy to partner with us, because this particular insurance product would make their operation much more efficient. A large part of their cost is, or cost of operation is, the payment of adjusters. So when there's a claim, then they send their adjusters to check, and that incurs a lot of costs. So if this is going to be successful, then that would make their operation much more efficient. So what we did was we gathered in 3 sites a group of farmers to orient them on the product, because of course this is not the same as indemnity. So we have to explain that this is an index-based insurance. So the explanation was done by PCIC, and we interviewed farmers about their willingness to pay. We also interviewed some local government staff. So because another model that PCIC is looking at is, instead of looking at individual farmers, that some of the local government units may be purchasing the insurance for the farmers. Okay. So we're conducting the insurance dry run this dry season, and it will continue in the coming wet season. And the detailed data from PRISM is going to be delivered soon to by Phil Rice to PCIC, and on the basis of that, we will see if there are triggers. And we will conduct a post-season survey on the same set of farmers and the local government units to present the results of analysis using PRISM data, and how much, if any, the farmers will receive in terms of payouts, if any. So a third activity that we're doing as part of Climber is the RCMAS Climate Plus, which is a farm-level agroclimate advisory. So in a session earlier this morning, they said actually that farmers change behavior when they are provided additional information on climate or weather. So our RCMAS, or the Rice Crop Manager Advisory Service, is another operational service. This was also co-developed by Erie and Phil Rice, and has been transferred to Phil Rice since 2021. So this is operational. Local government units are interviewing farmers and providing them with recommendations in terms of crop management and nutrient, particularly for nutrient management. So the farmers are interviewed and provided a one-page recommendation printout and also text messages. So what we're doing here is to provide additional information so that the recommendations will be adjusted based on the current conditions. So this brings together the advisory service of RCM and the agroclimatic advisory portal of the Department of Agriculture, Climate Resilient Agriculture Office, and developed in partnership with CIAT. So what it does is it provides farmers with alerts and adjusted recommendations based on weather forecasts. So at the moment, it's based on 6-month and 10-day weather forecasts, which is available from Pag-asa. And it focuses on flood and drought. And it uses remote sensing derived information on flood-prone locations at village level, also from PRISM data. And what they would like to also explore is the use of higher level or higher accuracy or weather data. So that was actually mentioned in the presentation, in the session earlier this morning, that there are already a lot of better resolution or better data on weather that could go into this app. Okay. So this is an example of recommendations based on weather forecast, and the farmers will get that the advisory translated in English, and these are being studied now in terms of how do we optimize this messaging and how do we make it much more applicable for the farmers. Okay, so as mentioned, we're looking at refinement and harmonization of messages, and also looking at baseline and post-season surveys. And as mentioned earlier, we're also exploring other sources of more localized weather forecasts. Okay, so we've presented the three major activities that we're doing as part of Climber here in the Philippines, and these are being done in partnership with several organizations. As I mentioned earlier, we're only looking at smaller sites, but the learnings that we are getting here, we intend to scale up. And so we're looking at how we can do that by partnering with government and other agencies to make sure that the learnings in these small sites can extend, and so we can cover the whole country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice. Hopefully my slides gonna. I wanted to explain a little bit more. Here, we were local. What I'm going to present, is what we did. Actually, we did on the risk contingent credit mostly in Africa. And then, as John mentioned, Climber is worldwide. We are trying to bring that in Asia. So hopefully, in Asian countries. But this is where the South learning come from. So I will present what we did, very practically what we did in Africa, what lessons we learned, and then it's not in the I know this ADB. We are supposed to Asia. I hope I'm not abusing my my role as a moderator, but I will see. Okay, so this is actually this is called risk contingent credit, as a risk financing. What I'm really passionate about that thing. I mean, you will see it's actually, we actually handle money to the farmers. And actually working with the banks, private sector. I know we are talking about PPP, but in practice it's very hard, It's much easier for the bank to lend to Bill Gates, Bezos, right? If you are poor farmers, no banks will take it because, you and I maybe it's interested, for them it's profit. So that is where we are thinking is how to leverage the private sector finance into climate finance. This is where we call the risk contingent credit. Okay, again, partnership is important, This was 2016, right? Well, now it's almost 10 years, imagine. We started in Kenya. This is in Kenya. This is, again, this equity bank, and if you know Africa, equity bank is one of the largest banks, not just in Kenya, it's also in the whole East Africa. And it's almost mostly innovative bank. They got the bank of the year somewhere, So this is a partner. We work with local, and and for the agriculture, and Alex talked about insurance. Also, reinsurance important. Swiss Re is come on board for help us out because this is systematic risk. And then the rationale, I think I already said, maybe it's not, already said, the limited access to finance is a key constraint for a lot of things, right? You're poor, nobody wants to lend to you because you are risky, right? You're smallholder farmers, nobody wants to lend to you because how about, you lost everything. So that is the idea. And the collateral, of course, somebody's a bank, you don't blame banks, that's their mandate is to make profit making, right? So that is where ration of credit, credit constraint, limited farm ability, improve agricultural activity, and insurance risk, the climate risk is most prominent risk farmers face. So what is risk contingent credit? You can read option. The whole idea is, we are trying to, we'll give credit, but we'll give you $100, right? But in the end, from the bank's point of view, you have to buy an insurance at the same time. This is your borrow, give you $100, but actually $110. I just make it up, of course. This $10 go to insurance in case it's not your fault. In case the weather. This is where I think a similar idea like Alice did. We have cases not your fault. Because your investment is going down, going all out, but you should the insurance will kick in to pay for the bank in that. Okay, here's more like, if you are a financial engineer, you know how this works. This is the risk is a loan amount a little bit higher, you have a premium. Of course, the drought, or right now we are talking, or you are talking all the other risk, by the way. It's not just, right now we are talking, climate nature, we are talking climate risk. Of course, you can talk about price vulnerability, right? You can insure against the price vulnerability, or you can other risk. So the lower part is the payment. Of course, the payment is, if it's total wipe out, the whole loan is paid by the insurance. But of course, if it's just part of it, you pay part of it. This is whole kind of actual kind of, it's like life insurance. How do you decide, you pay more? This similar idea, like that. I mean, this is where I really like this figure. It's like we are trying to make, the financial product and the internet mobile technology, because remember why we chose Kenya, because transaction cost, the smallholder transaction is very high. Kenya, the mobile payment is quite high. It's not applicable there. And then the remote sensing technology, this is similar. Well, in the end we didn't use, but I'll admit, because for the bank it's very conservative. They said the remote sensing too much. In the end we use rainfall based. This is a traditional rainfall based insurance. Okay, this is what is the practical side. The practical side, actually, if you look at the map of Kenya here, is we did it in the Machakos. Machakos is like 2-hour drive from Nairobi. It's Machakos County. Again, we did some pilot. Again, RCT is a golden, as a research right now, random control. Because we did this pilot, we want to see what works, what doesn't. So we actually have, if we look at the 3 arms, right? The risk contingent credit, the low credit, and the traditional credit, right? How it works. This is a research project. And again, I hope I don't borrow too much bother you about this research part, but I just want to show, we did our homework, we have evidence based. That's a picture. We have a lot of pictures. We did it 2016, 2017. We did the baseline. The RCT. You have the baseline and middle line, underline. That kind of thing. We did that. This is locations, and then that is how to to kind of randomly allocate people to different groups. Right? We'll actually look at the that is another instruction. You can see the banks, because remember, we are talking about the financial product. If you sell financial product, you have to get your clients educated. So financial education actually important. It's a mandatory, right? You have to, if you sell insurance, you have to tell your clients, what you are selling, and then actually you have to get the country's financial regulatory authority approve that one. All these things. This is why you want to see in the picture, actually the bankers have to see it in all the sessions. You are talking about here, I think it's 1,000 some farm. You are talking about a lot of sessions we have to go through that one. And then that is some random detail. Of course, we are, as a research project, we are trying to see is kind of this kind of risk, this kind of insurance premium can determine how much receiving premium can determine about the adoption of that thing. So we actually, from project money, we subsidize some premiums. Yeah, this is just, all the fun. Okay, actually, the long story short, we have done that, as I said, 2016, we actually implemented through 2 projects. One is a Global Resilience Partnership, it's funded by, I don't know, USAID and the Rockefeller Foundation, and then we have another follow-up, survey with the German fundings. Actually, if you look at this thing, it's not too bad. Traditional, it's better than traditional credit. I mean, think about it. This is a credit product. You are talking about, maybe 40% adoption rate is not that high, but remember that you are talking about money, right? That I heard even the insurance alone, you're talking 20-30% adoption rate is good. So actually, what is important actually is risk contingent credit. The farmers actually think is useful. It's higher than the traditional credit. Okay, so what have we learned? We learned also the good, the bad, and the ugly. The great extent farmer approach, they understand. This is one thing we realized. We said maybe it's very complex, right? Farmers don't understand the risk. Actually, they do. This is where I think during this session, a lot of speakers talk about farmers are entrepreneurs. They know how to understand risk. And then I already mentioned financial education is critical. Remember, we are talking about so-called unbankable, right? For the bankable, unbankable farmers, a lot of them never had a bank account in their life. And then how do you make sure they understand the risk? Say, you are pay a little bit more, to the regular loans. By the way, because of the insurance, the bank is willing to lend it to them. Also, we are talking about not the microfinance, very high interest rate. Interest rate is like the Kenya's commercial interest. Well, it's a commercial interest rate. It's like the 12%. In 1916, the other implemented that 15%. So this, and remember, this is without collateral. The banks lending to the farm without collateral. So maybe have not dealt with bank before as a no expected update due to the native implement. Well, because maybe you know the history. The devil is always in details. In 1917, you will remember Kenya. There's a presidential election. There's some violence. So implementation is always hard. Okay, scaling up. This is where Alice also talked about scaling up. This is where I really want why I presented that one. Scaling up with climate the other countries and the other. This is where how to scale up. The pilot. We are doing project is hard, but it's still it's not our goal. How to scale up. So learning curve. The first one we know what work, what incentivize. How farmers behave. Of course, it's not everywhere. You have to farmers have the incentive. Say there's some drought risk, right? It's not if it's too dry. Very dry area is not insurable, right? No insurance company will want the insurance. So you have to choose the right mix. We are talking about semi-dry area, that is important, and the banks, the insurance company, and even the reinsurance willing to come in. We are talking about more or less commercial, our idea, our fantasy in a sense. The idea, when a project came out, the banks willing to take this risk contingent credit as an innovative finance product. They can take it to portfolio. We are done, right? The private sector will take it over. This is our fantasy. But and then how do you get there? This is where the scaling up comes in. The team that is also the premier setting. We are trying to say right now we are setting how much premium you share, how much we have to negotiate, and as a honest broker, as a researcher, we will set the premium and negotiate with the insurance company and reinsurance company. That is fair enough. And then remember, this is legal contract, right? We have to, they have to sign up everything, and the farmers also have to sign up the papers. The monitor basic risk, also fair valuation, use baseline follow-up surveys with great insight of production practice across multiple crops. Alternative credit score, also we use, of course, it's not air from. By the way, if we do for the pilot, because we are not the bank, you just, they apply for credit, but the bankers also have refuse if they think you are too risky. They have their own practice. It's like regular loans, But for pilot side, we said you want to relax a little bit. We will take some risk. But if you're scaling up, the bank is not like you apply. Some farmers, even they have the opportunity to get the risk contingent. Maybe I don't want it because I don't like the premium somehow. And then if we apply, the bank have their own due diligence. This is where this is how practice come in. So now we are going to other side. We are going to Ethiopia. Right now Ethiopia actually this year. Okay. Thank you. Ethiopia. And then we are going to Zambia. Zambia is a climate country. We are going to Zambia. And hopefully I go to Philippines. This is another one. And then the lecture, this is Ethiopia. Actually, this is, see, I'm in the Photoshop, with Ethiopia. This is actually another, that is another Ethiopia. Sorry, this is Kenya. The family bank over there. If you know over there, the digital farm, the Afrikaans kind of shop over there. Again, we want to digitize everything, reduce the transaction cost. You can see this is a big crowd. Actually, farmers are very excited. I think one of this is the big guys, the parliamentary, the member of parliament, MPs over there to come in to do that. Okay. I think this is where I like this project is just because, that is really private sector driven. We are talking about the key players, insurance company and banks. You can look at the partners we are looking at over there, Ethiopia, Awash Bank, we are working, and in Zambia, we are talking, this is where the next year we are going to implement the Zambia. As I said, in the end, what we want to do, well, I don't need to do that. What we need to, of course, everything is here. wanted to do is the private sector, the banks, the insurance company take over the financial product, and then they will put it in one of the portfolio product. This is our goal. And again, we are not there yet, but this is our goal. Hopefully, thank you. I don't know who. Yatin? Yatin, you go. Yatin. The next one is Yatin. Actually, Yatin is the newest young professional at ADB, but we are very proud. He used to work at IPRI, so IPRI always put the training. The best RAs also come to here. So ADB is one of the contributions IPRI to this ADB's platform. Yatin.
Thank you very much, Liang. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I used to work at IFPRI to work with Liang and also some of our department directors and are sitting at the behind. I recently joined the ADB as an economist through the Young Professional Program. I'm very glad to present here about the work I did with Liang and also with other colleagues from the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Science, and also with my current supervisor here at ADB at the Economic Research and Development Impact Department. So this work I'm going to present on is to estimate graded ag GDP and assessing the impact of climate change on ag GDP in China from 2000 to 2020. It is still ongoing work, so I will mostly discuss our research plan and also about the possibilities of what can be done. During the past few days at the forum, some keywords keep lingering around in my head. So among them are like measure, measure, measure. I've heard many times. And also, like, people have called upon more people to go local. And I think this research project serves this purpose perfectly. Because if we want to go local, we need to first measure what is happening on the ground. So we need to have more granular data to know the agricultural production. And after that, we can assess the climate impact and to really help us design the interventions. Okay. First, what is agricultural GDP? The World Development Indicators define ag GDP as the gross domestic product coming from the agricultural sector, which corresponds to the international standard of industrial classification divisions 1 to 5 and includes forestry, hunting, fishing, as well as cultivation of crops and livestock production. So ag GDP is a critical indicator for the primary sector, and it is a sector about 2.5 billion people depend on for their livelihoods, and also important for food security. Why do we want to create graded agricultural GDP? As I mentioned earlier, it can help us understand the spatial distribution of agricultural production and the rural economic activity. So in the picture here, you can see that so far our situation is the picture on the left-hand side that the agricultural GDP, the numbers are usually available at the country level or at most the subnational level. But within those bigger countries or bigger subnational units, we don't know exactly where the agriculture is being produced. So our aim is to have more granular data as shown in the right-hand side, which can help us understand better about the spatial distribution. And after that, we can design, target, and evaluate rural development strategies with more focus. Because many of the interventions, as we have learned earlier, that they happen at the community level or village level, which is way below the level that the current statistics are informing us. And also, it's important to know the graded agri-GDP, then we can estimate the hazard exposure and disaster risk profile, because the disasters hazards, say the boundaries, they don't align with administrative boundaries. So we need another grade that can be flexibly aggregated to the different zones of disaster exposure and other zones. This is a study we have done before for the world to generate the graded agri-GDP, and for the year 2010. But this time we want to go deeper and to create for more years. Here I'm just illustrating what this data set can do if we have. So we can, one example is that we can overlay this graded agri-GDP data with the drought risk exposure and to analysis the current population or the current economic activities that are under the exposure. And we can see from picture A and B that most of the agri-GDP in low and middle income countries have a disproportionately higher risk for the drought. And also we can see that in the table underneath, this lists the top 10 countries with the largest total agricultural GDP exposed to the dry areas. We can see that China, India, and the US are the top 3. And with this granular data, we could also aggregate at the subnational level or even a more granular level. But here I'm just showing at the country level because that is more easy to be understand at the country level for a global study. So based on our previous work, this time we want to go deeper, and we want to create the graded agri-GDP for 20 years for China. It will be annual, and it will be higher resolution at 1 by 1 kilometer resolution. Why China? Because China is the largest agricultural country in the world. The total agri-GDP is about 1.3 trillion, and it's more than double the size of the second country, which is India. And the Chinese agri-GDP accounts for 1/3 of the world's total agri-GDP. So it's important to understand the heterogeneity within the big country in China. As an economist, we always love time series data, because with the panel data, we can do more analysis. We can go deeper to study the intervention and to study the causal links of different events. One example here, what we are doing is that we will link this time series agri-GDP data with the climate data, which nowadays also is becoming more and more prevalent at higher resolution and higher frequency. Here we will use the daily data for climate from 2 different sources, the ERA5 by the European Medium Weather Forecast Center, and also the Tomorrow.io data from a weather intelligence company. And the climate variables we will look at include the temperature, which has implications on agricultural production through the heat stress, cold spells, growing season, crop yield. And we will also include the precipitation data, which can cause droughts or floods or influence soil moisture. And we will also look at the wind, including typhoon, and the wind will also influence soil erosion and pollination. So how do we create the graded agri-GDP data? We have 2 main parts of the input data. The first group is county-level statistics we collected from various sources, from either the Central Statistic Agency or the local statistic agency in China. And then we also have another big part is the satellite data that we will derive the priors for the crop, livestock, forestry, fishery based on the land cover, population density, coastline, and a lot of information that can be collected by the satellite. So using the satellite priors, we will disaggregate our county-level statistics into the grids using the methods of cross-entropy optimization and some machine learning models. For machine learning models, we will experiment with support vector machines, random forest neural networks, and try to see which one performs the best, and then choose the best one to create the graded AgGDP. And so far, we have created for 1 year data, and we are going to evaluate which one performs best, and then we will use it to create for more years. So after we have the data, what can we do? One implication is that we can use the time series AgGDP data to estimate the impact of weather fluctuations. Weather is short-term realization of the long-term climate. So we will first start with weather fluctuations and use the fixed effects panel regressions. We can explore how exogenous variation in weather variables, including temperature, precipitation, and wind, how they influence the agricultural output. So here I'm just showing an example of what has been done at the global level using the country level data. This work is done by Marshall Burke and Solomon Xiang and McGill. They have found that so the temperature has a nonlinear effect on GDP, and the effect varies from different countries or different groups of countries. But we don't know exactly for each country what the relationship is like. For each country, it can be very different. Thus, we need more granular data for each country to look at their own specific relationship and to go local. And we can also estimate the impact of climate change to move from short-term weather fluctuation to the long-term climate difference. Here, we use the long-term difference strategy. We look at, instead of looking at annual fluctuation, we look at 2 different time periods apart in time, which can be 10 years or 20 years or 30 years apart. And the work of Xiang, they have found that when they look at different time periods apart, as shown here in different colors of the lines, it's actually very similar, which means that they do this study in the US and on the maize yields. It means that the effects of temperature on the maize yields at different time scales are similar. There are 2 implications for this. One, the effects of weather fluctuation almost can approximate the fluctuation of climate change. And the second implication is that it means there is little adaptation, because what happens in the short time still is happening over and over again in the long time. People didn't do many things to adapt, to try to reduce the climate loss. Related to that, we can actually somehow estimate the climate adaptation extent by differencing the estimates from previous 2 slides. Because in short term, we estimate the annual fluctuation in weather will cause influence on agricultural production. And then in the long term, if there is adaptation, we expect the influence of long-term weather fluctuation will be smaller if people have adapted, but if they didn't adapt, it will be similar. So by getting the difference, we can somehow quantify the extent of recent adaptation. This is some work done by Burke and Emmerich. A bit disappointedly that they found that longer run adaptations appear to have mitigated only less than half and more likely none of the large negative short run impacts of extreme weather on productivity. And it means that substantial losses will occur under future climate change if there is no countervailing investments. Here in the graph, we can see 2 lines. One, the solid line is the long-term difference, which is from the climate fluctuation, and the dashed line is the annual difference from the weather fluctuation. They are actually very similar. But this is the evidence for the US. We don't know what is going on in China, so it would be good to have some granular data for China and to investigate this. Lastly, we can predict the impact of future climate change using the produced data, because nowadays we also have more and more climate projection data at a high resolution to project into the future, 50 years later, how the climate is going to be under different scenarios. If we plug in those numbers to the previous damage function we have already established, we can predict into future how the climate is going to influence the agricultural production and the total GDP. So here is an example of what has been done by Xiang and other scholars. And they found that climate change is projected to increase economic inequality in the US. And most of the damage happened to the poorest counties. So it is very urgent that we get to know more nuance of the spatial distribution of the different damage. We still don't know about the things in China, and we don't know if we go deeper under the county level data. Currently, they use the county level data here. If we go deeper using our grade level data, which can be at the village level, even more granular, what can we learn? And what's the heterogeneity that is underlying? So yeah, that is some examples of what the granular data of AgriGDP can do. And also it can have other applications which we originally wanted to study more interventions. For example, the insurance program that we have discussed by the earlier presenters, or other interventions like irrigation, like seeds, how they actually influence the local agricultural production, and to evaluate the effectiveness of those related policies, it would be important to know the graded AgriGDP, so know more the detail of the measures, and it would be good to also collaborate with many practitioners who are sitting here, that if the researcher and the operationals can collaborate and share more data, and we can use your operational data to study what interventions are being successful on the ground using the graded data we have to make more informed decisions. Yeah, so that is all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. This is very it's white piece, not easy. So hopefully, Guomin, this is a very academic. A lot of things we are talking about. Hopefully, you can bring us to the ground, and then from the operation point of view, what we can learn from that.
Thank you very much, Liang Zhi. Thank you, everybody, all the speakers and the participants. It's my great pleasure to share what myself was working on, but I think more colleagues has no ADB policy and also PRC's experiences. But from this topic is how to build systematic resilience against the climate vulnerability and extremes. I think we can discuss it for more days, but time is very short. But I try to understand, catch up all the speakers is presented, how can we integrate it into our operations. So now I would like to share how ADB climate risk management, especially on China's operations. I think you might know that resilience is very comprehensive, especially for the systematic risks. Here, I think we already shared ecological resilience, physical resilience, financial resilience, social and institutional resilience. So it's very holistic approach to be adopted. This has been tried to be used in our operations. But in the past days, we said, okay, the climate risks cannot be, how to say, should be tackled at the regional level. But for ADB, as a banker, we focus on each project. But in our climate action plan, we already working on the upstream or midstream support to the DMCs. At the project level, we already have a framework for the whole cycle. From the concept paper at the stage, we already have a checklist. And then we have a detailed climate risk and vulnerability assessment analysis to work with all the scientific colleagues. Like we work together with Liang Zhi for several PRC projects. And the most important, we also working on the how to monitoring the implementation, whether the risks has been solved. So this is a simple framework. I not go to details. This is the checklist at the concept stage. We focus on we like safeguard work. We work on the assess the location or material and maintenance, and to review the performance of project outputs. And then we also have software to do the screening. And then we will work together with the consultants on detailed analysis. We do the very detailed impact assessment. I think today's presentation will be very helpful for our impact assessment, vulnerability assessment, and adaptation assessment. I would like to share at the adaptation assessment stage, the economic analysis need more support from the researcher, should be strengthened. This is not good enough by now. And we has working on how to strengthen the capacity building of the EA and I, especially with the work together with the DI, project design company. For the monitoring and evaluation, we are trying to enforce it, and we also try to combine with the environmental safeguard to save the costs for the EA and IAs. I think you have heard about our ambitious target, 100 billion by 2030. At the project level, we will work on it, and we have also a guide note to identify what kind of type is purely for the climate or partially for the for climate purpose. Or we work together with the MDBs to develop the methodology to identify the adaptation measures and follow the same methodology to accounting the climate finance. Yeah, this also seems try to catch up with the researchers. Yeah, we use identify the activities by the step one is try to establish the vulnerability, and then we provide a statement of intent to address vulnerability, and we then accumulate clear and logical connection between vulnerable and project activities. It's challenging. It's sometimes. Yeah, I will not go to the details. I think all the researchers know it, but we need to do the detailed work for ADB staff with the consultant. And for the climate finance, ADB have a guide note. Here is one of our examples. We have, for different sectors, we have different examples. Yeah. We will identify the possible impacts and the possible activities in response. For the climate finance accounting, we also included the mitigation activities. So we will, for example, we will reduce energy use in transaction, irrigation, and all others. So it's a very complicated process, very heavy work for the consultant. With the ADB's policies enhancing, this work has been strengthened and also get strong support from more and more colleagues. Recently, ADB published the climate finance results and it's very good. During the pandemic, the climate finance is not so high, but till this year, it's increased. The total climate finance has been above more than 10,000 million. It's in details you can find in ADB website, and for the agriculture sector, I think it already account 80% above. This is a region analysis. I think for the agriculture, obviously, we have 35 or almost 36% for the adaptation, only 5% for the mitigation. But it might be increased since the soil carbon has been paid great attention. Totally, in general, it's very good, and the actual investment in climate has been above our 2030 target. So whole bank is making our efforts. Now I would like to share our case in China. Yeah, for the upstream support, we support China to develop the national climate adaptation strategy in 2035. Here I would like to share the agriculture and the food security is the top one priorities to be highlighted. But for the whole strategy, we highlighted the early warning system, considering the costs. So this strategy also follow the ecosystem approach, as you see, and also the water be centered. The river and ocean integration has been followed. And the genetical regions or the strategic regions in China, or economic regions, has been highlighted and developed a specific chapter. So the whole very systematic strategy might be useful for systematic resilience, as we are discussing. not only for the some crops, but also for the whole agriculture or the rural area, even the whole society, including the health, the infrastructure, or, and all the sensitive industries. For ADB, we mainly support them to strengthen the risk assessment or the finance and the insurance, as well as the ocean elements. Of course, for the overall, we use the whole ADB's knowledge to support the PRC to develop the strategy. After the strategy, actually, we continually provide support to develop the provincial level or county level action plans. It has been published if you have time to read some news. And we also provide some training programs. And we work together with different international, more than 40 international organizations to work on the climate adaptation. At the same time, so we work together with some private sectors like Alibaba to promote the innovation. We also try to work with different FI in different loan projects to highlight it, how to manage the climate finance. We also discuss how to work together on the resilient cities, especially for the national program. We use the pragmatic approach to support resilient river programs like Yangtze River, Economic Belt, and the Yellow River. Of course, other small rivers at the provincial or county levels. So that's almost all. I still have many slides for projects, but here I just to highlight it. Our systematic approach to support the Yellow River agriculture program. It covers 24 counties in 7 provinces. So this, I quickly go through the major component. This is the risks. The temperature is increasing 0.27 centigrade every 10 years. And all the rainfall in some area is only less than 200 millimeters, and the runoff is decreasing. It's very challenging in the whole Yellow River basin. So we do some prediction. It's by if no adaptation measures, it's challenging for the crops industry, maybe declined 5 to 10%, maybe more, considering the uncertainty, as you know. But how can we manage the uncertainty? It's still challenging. We need your help. Yeah. For this project, we focus on some key elements. And the first one is farm infrastructure projects. The second one is farmer production and ecological environmental improvement project, and water and soil conservation component. So we also work on the land, water, road, electricity, or I just go quickly. Soil improvement, and also the construction of a farmland ecosystem. It's very systematic. Yeah. We also work on the agriculture value chain. I think that's everybody know. The processing has been mentioned. Yeah, the brand has been promoted. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Maybe you'll sit there. So can I ask all the speakers come in? I don't want to encroach your lunchtime. We still have like around 10 minutes. Maybe you have questions. Can you just come over? Hopefully, no. Come on. I know have a lot of questions. Maybe no question will be easy. Okay, go ahead. Maybe go to the microphone. I think you have just online audience just because, yeah.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. The question is for Dr. Alice. In creating the study through the pilot, how long does it normally take for you to make conclusions and scale it up?
For the work that we're doing in Climber, so the ones that we presented, for example, the crop insurance work with PCIC, we needed 2 seasons for the dry run because we also want to get the information from the farmers whether this is going to be something that they would like to actually avail of. So, and this season we have El Nino, so maybe there will be a trigger because if there's no trigger, then we won't be able to show an example of if it's an indemnity based, the current system, this is what you will, this is your payout. If not, this is your payout. So, but we'll try to see because now, as I mentioned, it's El Nino, there may be some sites where there are triggers that would be, as a result of lower yields. So we'll see. But as part of Climber, we are really keen on scaling. So even if we're still doing this, we're already discussing with PCIC about their interest in taking this also in a potential for actually really getting this product out for farmers.
Thank you. Anybody here? Okay, go ahead. If not,
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. My question also goes to Dr. Alice about the crop insurance program you made. I think it's very beneficial to other countries as well, such as Cambodia. Many farmers is affecting some of the flood. And I want to hear whether you guys have any expansion plan to other countries. As we are agri-tech startup using satellite data, I thought if any possibility we can collaborate in the future. Thank you.
It's interesting that you mentioned Cambodia because as part of the remote sensing based information and insurance for crops in emerging economies, so RIICE, Cambodia was one of the sites.
Oh, okay.
And actually that was the first one where there were really interest from crop insurance, so Forte.
Yeah, we are working with them.
Yeah, so Forte
Correct.
is working with the consortium, and they initiated some dry run earlier, and now they submitted a proposal to Insur Resilience. So we'll see if it will be funded. But there's a lot of interest from the private sector there to use satellite data for crop insurance.
Thank you so much.
anybody? Just any online, guys, if you're online, you have a question, I guess you can just open your speaker and then. Regina, go ahead.
Thank you. The presentations were very interesting from a PNG perspective. Since climate-related adversities started in 2015-16, and the people are left to fend for themselves, to be able to sort of build themselves. Many of the issues that we face are loss of seeds and planting materials. And how do you, in this forum going forward, how do you see assisting Pacific Island countries, especially to build back after floods or frosts and droughts that affected as a result of climate change impacts? And some of those experiences that the work that you were sharing on from the moderator's experience on Africa to the Asia experience. Thank you.
Okay. I know moderate, but I want to throw the hard part. This is a very hard question. Maybe I know, John, you're the climate leader.
I think that's the multi-million-dollar question. And in my presentation, the second slide I had with the landscape that we're working towards, the climate resilient landscape. It's context specific. So in the example you've just given, there can be a loss of, there can be floods and a loss of planting material, seeds. In other cases, there could be a hurricane and infrastructure destroyed. This is again why there's an increasing focus on the institutional and governance environments. I mean, I would turn to you and ask as a first question, what is the PNG's climate strategy? Because we as researchers work with a host of partners, which include government. So I will freely admit I don't know enough about what the climate strategy is in PNG. I know IRI had a mission there a few years ago looking around rice, etc. But the networks that exist, which is why fora like this is so useful, because it brings together different people with different expertise. So what existing networks can you tap into? If seed has been lost from a particular crop, is that crop growing in other places? Are there seed banks that can be tapped into? There are so many different approaches. But at the end of the day, it's got to be within the governance and institutional environment provided in the PNG at national level, and however decentralized government systems go.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, go ahead. Online audience, you can raise your question. Raise your hand. Hopefully I can see it. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I'm Don Palo from Food Link Advocacy Cooperative. My question is for John, but I'd like to get it from ideas got taken from Yating and Alice. My question basically is about, do we have an idea or a sense of what a good model for a resilient food system is in the face of experiencing shock? And the reason I'm asking this is because so far we don't have an idea of the behaviors of these systems. And looking at the kinds of data that Yating, for example, and Alice can provide with their technology, we can see them, but after the fact. Many of the interventions we need to do have to be within a week or 2 weeks' time once these extreme shocks happen. And we need to figure them out. Otherwise, we were actually at the risk of increasing further the changes, the disruptions these extreme situations do. So I suppose that's a Miss Universe kind of question, but hopefully you'll have some idea. And maybe for Dongmei, will ADB or any other institution in that at the ADB's level be able to figure out interventions that are actually as fast as well? So I have ideas coming from COVID-19, especially from the beginning, and I've seen that there's a lot of disruptions because of immediate actions that are not aligned to the behavior of the system that it actually occurred. Anyway,
thank you. This is perfect. I think Yati and then Jiang and then Dongmei, you have the final word. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I can start. From my perspective, it's important to build a very swift and technology-based system that can it's important to have the high-frequency data that can inform us on the ground information very quickly. Like the example you have gave for the COVID situation, when the COVID happened and when there is a lockdown, people need food, and so where do we send food to? And where are those needs located? We need to have very granular information. Nowadays, actually, it's possible, and it has been implemented more and more widely that voluntarily there are like online platforms coming up for the emergency response. People, they voluntarily, they share their location. Oh, I have extra food here, and people there, they need food. We can share the information online through technology and help each other to take actions very quickly, so that people can help each other. Also, the government can help find the people in need very quickly. I think it's important, faced with those unexpected challenges and disasters, important to have the swift information system to help us build the food security and other resilient responses.
John, go ahead. No, you go. I think, don't maybe. Oh, you want? Go ahead. Okay, you go.
I wasn't able to mention earlier that as part of PRISM, so they don't only produce area and yield estimates at the end of the season. They also, in the event of a flood or drought, an assessment is also made in terms of damages. But one thing that we were, what adjustment that we made based on our discussions with the Department of Agriculture, they want earlier advice. So when Pag-asa releases information about a coming typhoon, they want to know like how many areas could potentially be damaged. So that is all now part of the system of PRISM, that they also release that, because that kind of information is important for the DA. For instance, if it's early on in the season, then they can mobilize seedlings for distribution, or even mobilize relief in advance. So there are some options that are made earlier on, because when the technology was being developed, there were discussions that were being made with the Department of Agriculture.
Go ahead. John will
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, during the COVID, it's very special, but the climate disaster is happening. So how can we do it? As you noted, ADB is leading in this region as a climate bank. That's why we try to respond to all the clients' needs. As I showed, our investment is increasing. The second one, we are working on the national capacity, especially upstream support, as I just mentioned. We are developing the cooperation with different countries, and we develop the program approach for investment. Recently, last year just approved a program for Bangladesh. They developed the adaptation action plan, and we use the very efficient policy-based loan to support the country. And the third level, I think that technology really is helpful, especially the digital technology. I spend my time in my past decade, no matter big data platform or each consumer or have a phone, or everything has been on phone. No matter early warning system can linked with each consumer, and at the same time, the food delivery system, the logistics should be well developed and be environmental sound. So then to ensure each consumer can be reached under the risk. Of course, the food, cooperation. The last one is the cooperation among the region or the international world. Multiple cooperation are really important. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. John, you have the final word now. Try to be short.
Yeah, you said sum up. It won't be a sum up, but I mean, I think this takes us around in full circle, because much depends. There's a lot of anticipatory adaptation and resilience, adaptation capacity that can be built up. Some of the tools that Alice has been working on, combined with the climate risk mapping at a local level, looking at actual and predicted risks, and in partnership with same groups of farmers and other stakeholders, looking at adaptation pathways depending on those risks. So if you're getting saline intrusion, both from sea level rise, etc., Are there particular areas which are likely to be hit hardest in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Are those the areas where you should be targeting saline and submergent tolerant rice varieties? Or are those areas where actually agricultural-based livelihoods are going to be so threatened that you might need to consider complete livelihood transformation? There's a lot of anticipatory measures that can be taken. But it does come down to absolute partnerships and taking advantage of all the technologies we've got, early warning systems. Early warning systems without adaptation capacity is not going to be as useful as early warning systems when combined with adaptation capacity. So it's technology, it's institutions, it's governance, it's policy, it's farmers, it's local government, it's national government, and it might all seem overwhelming, but that's why we talk about transformation, because we need business unusual. We are acting fast, we've just got to act faster. Big challenge, but big challenge is what we faced in the world many times, and we just need to make sure we damn well overcome it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, thank you for your guys' patience. You know, I'm under 10 minutes, so 10 minutes overdue. So thank you. To have a good night. I think we'll close this section. Thank you very much. Thank you.